streaming and screaming. All right. Those of you who are joining with us online, whether you are live or watching as a recording, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you. Okay, so in preparation, let me go ahead and tell you, you're going to have your thinking caps on tonight. We are, as I told Candace during the practice round. We have a practice round, by the way, at 4:30. Sometimes we run a little bit late because we're trying to work out kinks to the technology. So sometimes we're doing that. But 4:30 is a good time to tune in because it's just lighthearted stuff. I mean, we just have a weird time. But why did I bring that up? I was telling her something. Got to have your thinking caps on. Oh, I could, when we get to Revelation chapter 12, which is where we're going to be tonight, I could just tell you this is what it is, and you just accept it and move on. But my hope is, I've been here for 6 years. I've been striving for this. My hope is that you would demand more. Like, how do you know that that's what that is? And it's an answer to that we will be searching other passages, and I'm sure it's going to spill over into next week. Because it's a lot. I mean, it's like just a couple of verses, but it's a lot that's in there. And so those are the things we're going to look at. But while we're getting there, while we're waiting on some folks to join in with us, it is October the 16th, 2024. Is it really the 16th? Yeah, it is. So, do y'all have any birthdays that y'all know of? Anything that happened on this date? Is this an anniversary of any date? Okay, well, I've got a few things for you that maybe you'll appreciate. We'll see. On this date in 1758, we would have to say happy birthday to Noah Webster. Yeah, if you ever looked at a dictionary, you could say happy birthday to Noah Webster. He was born in Connecticut on this date. He died in 1843. 1925, we'll skip forward just a little bit. If you ever watched Murder, She Wrote, Angela Lansbury. This is her birthday. She was born in 1925, born in London, and she died just a couple of years ago, died in 2022. 1931, happy birthday to Charles Chuck Colson. If you know Chuck Colson, of course, he was involved in the Watergate scandal. He was an advisor to the president, but he became a believer while he was there in prison. And he became an extremely strong advocate. And if you ever get a chance, you ought to Google it, go back and listen to some of his old, he's dead now. He died back in 2012, but he had a radio spot and he would just take a minute. I think it was just a minute blurb. And he would look at what was going on in the world, and he had such an amazing ability. I wish that I had it. I don't. But he could look at what was going on in the world, and he could break it down and talk about how we should be looking at that from a Christian worldview. A brilliant, brilliant mind. But anyway, he was born on this date in 1931. 1962, I don't know if you care about basketball, but Manute Bol. If you remember Manute Bol, he broke into the NBA back in 1985. He was 7 feet 7 inches tall. That's like towering over Shaquille O'Neal. I'm just telling you, the man was huge. Well, no, he was tall. He wasn't huge. He was like about that big around. And kind of funny because his son is in the NBA now, and his son's name is Bol Bol. But anyway, not very imaginative. But anyway, so yeah, he was born on this date in 1962. Died in 2010 of kidney failure, which I thought was interesting. So he wasn't very old. That puts him at what, 8? Yeah, it puts him at 48 when he died. Y'all may not care about it. Somebody might care about this. 1977, singer John Mayer was born. He's 47 years old. Bridgeport, Connecticut. And then if you watch baseball nowadays, 1992, Bryce Harper, who at one point was making a case for being the best player in baseball. I don't think he can make that case anymore, but he's still good. But he's 32. He was born in Las Vegas. Plus, he plays for the Phillies, and so we don't like him. But anyway. I actually, usually when I report on deaths on this date, I only usually have 2 or 3, but I got several that I just thought were interesting. In this date in 1555, Hugh Latimer died. Now, you may not know who Hugh Latimer was, but he was a big part of the Reformation, and he brought up Catholic and strong Catholic. Said he was the strongest Catholic that you knew. But when he got into the debates in some of the higher institutions of learning, he became convinced that Protestantism was the way to go, and which was fine for a while. But then, toward the end of his life, Queen Mary the First came into power, and she was a Catholic, and she was a mean joker, and she had him burned at the stake. If you ever heard of, you may not have ever heard of the Oxford Martyrs. These are people who debated at Oxford for Protestantism. There was 3 of them, and he was one of them, and she had them all killed, burned at the stake. But anyway, he was 80 when he died. And 1793, Marie Antoinette, she was beheaded at age 37 on this date. She was the Queen of France. You can make of this what you will. In 1906, Verena Howell Davis died. Anybody have a guess as to who that was?
Not a clue.
Davis. She was the first, I guess, and only, she was the first lady of the Confederate States. She was Jefferson Davis's wife. She died at age 80, but it's kind of odd to think that she lived into the 1900s. 1946, Alfred Yodel died. He was one of many who died because it was also on this date that the Nuremberg trials took place, where they tried many of the Nazi leaders, and he was one of them. And there are several that I could have named, but the only reason that I mentioned him is because he was the German general who actually signed the unconditional surrender of the Nazis to the Allied forces. And then they killed him. So, anyway. But he was 56 when he died, and like I said, several others died in that. 1959, George C. Marshall died. If you are familiar, it was really before my time, but the Marshall Plan, which was the reconstruction of Europe after World War II, he's the one who put all that in place. And then in 2010, Barbara Billingsley died. And I always remember that name because it came up on right after Leave It to Beaver. And she died on this date in 2010. She was 94 when she died. So, all right, a few things happened, and then we're going to get to our study. On this date in 1829, the Tremont Hotel was opened up. That was the first United States modern hotel. It opened in Boston. And also in Boston, I don't know if it was at the same hotel 40 years later in 1869, but there was a hotel in Boston that became the first to offer indoor plumbing. So, and then, what now? Yeah, we like him. Yeah. 1959, John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. He was the abolitionist who fought for the freeing of slaves, and so he raided a compound there, a military compound that in Virginia. And of course, that insurrection was squelched. But anyway, it was on this date. 1940, again, this is a sad day in history. In 1940, the Warsaw Ghetto was formed, where they gathered many of the Jews and killed them in World War II. The Nuremberg trials, I mentioned that. 1950, there was the first release of C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was released in London on this date in 1950. 2 more things. So you probably saw this picture. Maybe some of y'all were around. I mean, I was born, but I had no idea what was going on. 1968, Americans Tommy Smith and John Carlos famously gave the Black Power symbol while standing on the platforms at the Olympics. Maybe y'all seen pictures of that. That was on this particular date in 1968 in Mexico City. And then, here's a little bit of trivia. It was on this date that Gilligan's Island pilot was first shown on TV, filmed in 1963. What year was it aired for the very first time? Gilligan's Island pilot. I don't know the story behind this because I didn't look it up, but I'll let y'all look it up.
1984.
Okay? 1992, almost 30 years later, after it was filmed, and after the show was come and it had already gone by that time, the pilot was shown on TBS. So look it up, find out why. I don't know. Okay, let's see here. I have not pulled us up to make sure that we're, oh yeah, look at that, came right up on my page of all things. Okay, there you go. Open up your Bibles, Revelation chapter 12, and I'm just telling you, it's about to get weird, people. It's about to get weird. Now, and so if you're just joining in with us, we need you to put on your thinking cap. Okay. Now we've been walking through this. We are halfway through the book. We've been doing it for a year. Okay, we're halfway through. And it kind of brings something to mind. It's really not a bitter memory for me anymore. It's just a memory. It just is what it is. But I remember I was doing this at my former church, and it took 2 years to go through. And those people there, they loved the study of the book of Revelation. I mean, they loved it. Sunday school classes would do it. They'd have their own separate Bible study. They would do it. I did it. I mean, they just couldn't get enough of it. And so I went through it for 2 years, and there were some people who really, really loved that study and all that. And the funny thing is that when I went to go leave, there was somebody who, I don't know, when he found out that there were certain people who didn't like me, suddenly, he didn't like me either. And he was like, 2 years to go through the book of Revelation. I just can't believe it. And I thought you really liked it while I was going through it. But anyway, whatever. So it takes a long time to go through it, and it's y'all's fault because you asked for it like that. So I got to blame it on somebody else. It can't be my fault, right? I mean, I'm the preacher. What do we do wrong? So we have been we've gone through half of the book already, and here's what happens. It has really gone rapid fire, especially when you consider that the events of the tribulation, which is why most people want to study the book, the events of the tribulation didn't start even until chapter 6. And now, so in 5 chapters, we have covered a lot of territory. It has already gone basically through most of the tribulation. We are now at the doorsteps of the Battle of Armageddon. And suddenly John puts on the brakes. And it is going to be another 4 chapters before we can get to the last few months of the tribulation. We've already gone through the seal judgments, and the seal judgments gave birth to the trumpet judgments, to the 7 trumpet judgments. And we've already gone through the six of those trumpet judgments. All we got left now is the 7th trumpet, which is going to give birth to the 7 bowl judgments, which are going to come. They're going to be rapid fire, and then the end is going to be here. So we've covered a lot of territory, and now it is going to go slow as molasses. Like by the time we get to opening up to sounding the 7th trumpet and seeing those bowl judgments unfold, y'all gonna be like, well, we done forgot everything that happened. Okay? So, the reason is now we're going to get to a point. If you remember last week, the way that I ended it was, most of the story has been from the perspective of Earth. People who are on Earth, this is how they would tell the story. And we've had a couple of interludes. We've had a couple of breaks. Hey, welcome back. We've had a couple of breaks where they look at the story of the tribulation from heaven's vantage point. Well, now when we get to chapter 12, now we are going to see it basically from Satan's viewpoint. This is going to be Satan's perspective of the tribulation. That is chapter 12 through chapter 14. So, we're going to be talking about some of the same stuff, okay? Or at least running parallel to the stuff that we've already talked about, just from somebody else's viewpoint. That's all. Somebody else's autobiography of the same stuff. Like I mentioned Chuck Colson a second ago. Chuck Colson wrote a book about what went on during Watergate, and so did other people. Just different viewpoints, same story. So that's what we have here, okay? So, now, in chapter 11 and in verse 1, we looked at this already. We talked about this like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And by the way, any study that you want, we have archived. It's here where you're watching this now. If you're watching this online, it's on our website. It's on Facebook. And I believe it's also on YouTube. I know we record it on YouTube every week, so I think it's archived there as well. But so anything that we've talked about, you can go back and watch those and all that. And if you fast forward through my silliness, and then you stop at the prayer request, which may be old by now, you're probably only talking 30-minute lessons. So go through and check that out. So we talked about this a few weeks ago in chapter 11 and verse 1. He says, get a measuring rod, get up and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship in it. Now, we talked about what that means. That's basically not measuring so we can know how many feet or yards or even stadia or whatever. It's really to section it off, to section off the temple and those who belong in it, which are the Jews. Because once again, the Jewish people will take center stage in the activity of God on the earth. Now, right now, because of their rejection, because they have chosen to reject their Messiah, which is what they did at the crucifixion, God created a new entity to focus his efforts in and through the world, and that's the church. That's why we call this the church age. But remember, at this point in time, church is poof, gone, rapture. And so his focus, once again, is going to move back to the Jewish people. And that's the plan all along. I mean, Paul said that in Romans chapters 9 through 11. I mean, he'll talk about it again. So it's going to happen. And so chapter 11, verse 1 is going to hint at that. Chapter 12 is going to highlight it. It's not just a hint, it's a highlight. So let's look, chapter 12, beginning in verse 1. There was a great sign. Now let's just stop real quick. Great means it's like, it might be great in size, but it is certainly great in significance. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. And she was with child, and she cried out, being in labor and in pain to give birth. Oh my goodness. Now we're starting on all the weird stuff. What on earth is that talking about? Talking about a woman who's pregnant. What are we talking about? Israel. The woman is Israel. If you've got a study Bible, it might even say that. In fact, mine does. Yeah, it says the woman, Israel. There's some debate about that, other people might read it differently, and they have a right to be wrong. Just kidding. I've said before, we have to be very patient and very understanding of people who read it differently than we do. It doesn't mean that we're right and they're wrong. That's why we're not dogmatic on everything that we teach. But I just believe it just makes sense. Everything that I'm telling you, it just seems to make more sense than anything else that I've heard through the years. So it's talking about Israel, and it says she was clothed with the sun. That's talking about the brilliance. And she had the moon under her feet. That is her exaltation, the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, their exaltation over everything else. And on her head, a crown of 12 stars. That is triumph. A crown meaning triumph. Here's the cool thing. And this is what we're going to get at tonight and next week, is we are going to, once again, because I love doing this. I hope I can teach it well. That's my fear, honestly. And I'm not even kidding about that. I love to teach, but sometimes I just don't do it well enough. But I want you to see, once again, how all the scriptures just weave back and forth, and they're all in such unity. So, look back, keep your finger there, but look back all the way back at the beginning, and this is when it gets really fun, is when From the beginning to end, it's all the same. Genesis chapter 37. You remember the story of Joseph. In fact, it wasn't that long ago that I was preaching on Joseph. And so, of course, I'm sure you remember it if I preached on it, right? Genesis chapter 37. Let's begin in verse 9. And you remember Joseph and his dreams, right? Now he had still another dream and related it to his brothers, which of course was his mistake. I mean, just like keep your mouth shut, but whatever. That's from human perspective. And said, Lo, I have had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon, this is mom and his dad, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. He being the 12th. This is the 12 tribes of Israel. This is the nation of Israel. This is the Jewish people. So, we know that this woman is Israel. And it says that she was with child, and she cried out being in labor and in pain to give birth. And we know that this is not literal, but for hundreds of years. In fact, I could put together some passages I didn't plan to do, and I don't want to take up even more of your time, but you can go all the way back to the book of Genesis, in Genesis chapter 12, where God makes a revelation to Abraham and goes into covenant with Abraham. And though, if you just read those words, you may not get a picture of the Messiah. Actually, you can go, oh, my word. You can go back to Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, when God is pronouncing judgment upon Adam and Eve and the serpent. And he says the seed of the woman. Going all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, you have this promise of the Messiah. And when you get to Genesis chapter 12 and he's making his promise to Abraham, we may not see the kernels of the Messiah in our understanding, but here's what Jesus said. Jesus said in the Gospels, and I didn't prepare to say this, so I can't give you chapter and verse, but you can look it up. Google it. It's there, I promise. He said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced. So that something that God told Abraham, he understood that there was a Messiah to come. You see what I mean? Y'all with me so far? Okay. So, and ever since then, you can go through to the promise to the 12 tribes, especially when you get to David, and he keeps making these promises to David that your seed will never come off the throne, and those kinds of things. For hundreds of years, and now with the new math that I've come up with, you're talking thousands of years, they have been longing for this Messiah to come and to lead them to prosperity and to freedom and to peace. And so when it says that she was crying out in labor and in pain to give birth, they are longing for this Messiah. That's what it's talking about. So, my first question is are we at least somewhat clear on verses 1 and 2? Are we good with that? Okay. If not, I mean, and if you're watching at home, at least if it's live, I'm not sure if I would get it. You can text us. You can email us if you're watching this as a recording. Okay. But if you're watching this now, you're watching this live, you can put a question in the comment section and I'll get it right here and I'll do my best to answer it. Okay. But I want to make sure that we're clear on verses 1 and 2. The woman is Israel. Now we're about to get into some fun stuff, y'all. Woo, baby. Thinking caps on. Here we go. Then another sign, and it's another of the same kind, which means this is significant. This is huge. Huge. Anyway. Another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 diadems. Now, to this point, we've been taking the book of Revelation fairly literal. There are some places where it has been symbolic. And now we're talking about this dragon's got 7 heads, 7 crowns, 10 horns, and all that. Now we get really, really weird, okay? So obviously we are talking about symbolic language here. But it points to something that is very, very real. And if I can do a good job, and you can hang in there with me as I stammer through it, you'll see it really does make a lot of sense. It really does come together. So.
Now, John is still seeing this?
John is, yes, he's the one who's seeing the vision, and he's writing them down. So let's start off, first of all, with the dragon itself. The red dragon. It's a great red dragon. It's a big red dragon. And it is symbolic for something else. But, so what is the red dragon? Well, we don't really have to guess at this. We don't have to argue about this. We don't have to contemplate this. Because the answer is given to us in verse 9. So just go down your page a little bit, and John will tell us what the red dragon is. And the great red dragon which was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan. So we'll talk about those words in a couple of weeks when we finally get there, when I finally make sense out of this stuff. We know that the red dragon is Satan, okay? It is told to us. We don't have to guess, right? So who's the woman? Boom. Who's the dragon? And we got a big problem because these two are going to go at each other. But the thing is, what's going to be so confusing is, how do we make sense out of this description? Because he's got 7 heads and 7, he's got a crown on each head. And then he's got 10 horns. So we're going to break this up, and we're going to make sense out of the heads this week and the horns next week. Okay? Because if I try to throw all this at you at one time, I mean, I would totally blunder it, and you'd like, I'm never going back because he's not making any sense. He's got to be, he's probably smoking something. So, all right, to make sense out of this, we're going to turn. Okay, I want you to turn over just a couple of pages to Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter 17 is going to talk about another woman. This is a different woman. Let's not confuse them. It's a very different woman than the woman in chapter 12. It's really the world system that is run by Satan. That's what chapter 17 woman is about. But look at verse 8. And we'll talk about more about what this means in its context later. But we're trying to figure out, here's all we're trying to figure out. What are the 7 heads? So, in verse 8 of Revelation chapter 17, the beast that you saw was and is not and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. So the beast is the Antichrist. We've already established that. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. Well, here's what we're going to find out. The beast, the Antichrist, is going to die, and he is going to be resurrected. Okay? Now, there's debate of whether or not that's real or whether it's staged and fake, all that kind of stuff. To me, it doesn't matter. I got an opinion that I'll share with you, but it doesn't matter. Okay? So, he's going to come back, and people are going to be in wonder over that. They're going to be in awe over that. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads. So we are finally, I don't know, honestly, I don't know why he waits, 4 chapters before he tells us what the 7 heads are, but now we're going to find out what the heads are. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. They are 7 kings. Or better yet, let's just go ahead and translate it to make this easy. 7 kingdoms. Okay? Just... Okay. All right. Well, hey, at least it was a biblical reference that came over, okay? It's not like Candy Crush or something like that. All right. So, 7 kingdoms, just like President Biden going overseas or whatever would represent the United States, These kings represent the kingdom itself. So the 7 heads are 7 kingdoms. 5 have fallen. Look at verse 10. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. So we got to remember, this is from John's vantage point that he's saying this. 7 kingdoms that have ruled the world. This is cool, y'all. This is cool. And I've been told that you can't really see this all that well online. I apologize if that is the case. I'll do the best that I can. Oh, wow, that is a lot of wool. Let's see. Right there. Okay. The 7 kingdoms that have ruled the world. From John's vantage point, there have been 5, right? That's what the book of Revelation just told us. There have been 5. Here are those 5. Egypt was the first. Assyria was the second. Babylon was the third. Persia was the fourth. And the Greeks were the 5th. Okay? So you got these were the world empires that ruled the world in their day. Of course, Greek, we know Alexander the Great. We're familiar with him. Persia, we're familiar with that because Daniel talked about Persia. In fact, he was kind of between Babylon and Persia. He talked about Nebuchadnezzar in the first part. In fact, we're going to look at that next week. But Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, and then suddenly he's talking about Darius. Well, that was a totally different kingdom. So the book of Daniel actually spans a pretty large bit of time. So these are the 5 which were. When John was writing this, and he was getting this revelation, who was in power? Because he said there 5 have been, 1 is now.
Romans?
The Romans. Rome, the Roman Empire. So, 7 heads. We've got 6 right here, and he said there is 1 that is yet to come. Now, because we are not looking at the context yet of Revelation chapter 17, we're not there yet. We'll talk, or 14. 14? 17? Okay. Because we're not there yet, we're not gonna get into all that. But this is, and we will next week. This is the kingdom that is run by Antichrist at the end of time. Now, again, we'll look at that next week, and we're going to look at a lot of cool stuff. But just hang in there. Just trust me. Believe me now. This is the future kingdom that is run by Antichrist during the tribulation. So, we see then that Satan is he has these 7 heads, and they are the world empires that have ruled the world. But why are they referred to as heads of Satan? And I've got something that, we got time. Let me think real quick. Chill out. So, I want you to turn back with me, if you will, to Daniel. Oh, I hope I can remember where this is. Daniel. Keep your finger there. We're coming back. Oh, wow. That's going to be fun. Daniel chapter 10? Yes. Okay. So Daniel chapter 10. And we're gonna close with this thought. It is a truth from the Bible. And Al Gore stole the words. This is an uncomfortable truth. Wait, that wasn't the word he used, was it? What did he say? What was his book? Not an inconvenience, an inconvenient truth, uncomfortable truth. Anyway, it's uncomfortable truth. We'll just leave Al Gore out of it. Okay, Daniel chapter 10. Look at verse 10. And you remember, Daniel is all about visions. He's having all kind of visions and interactions with God in different ways. He's about to have an interaction with an angel who is going to speak to him. Then behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees, which if an angel touched you, you would tremble too. He said to me, O Daniel, a man of high esteem, understand the words that I am about to tell you, and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. And he said to me, do not be afraid, Daniel, which is easy. It's so easy for angels to say, isn't it? For from the first day that you set your heart on understanding this and on humbling yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I've come in response to your words. Look at verse 13. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me for 21 days. Then behold, Michael, who is Michael? Archangel. One of the chief princes came to help me, for I had been left there with the kings of Persia. So we know that Michael is an archangel. What is he called here by Daniel? Chief what? Prince. Angel referred to as prince. Now look at the first part of verse 13. The prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me. There was an opposition force that was there, and it was another angel. Who would be opposing an angel of the Lord? Or one of his minions, a satanic angel, which we would know of as a demon, right? This is talking about demonic forces that is overseeing Persia. But it doesn't stop there. Look down at verse 20. The angel is again speaking to Daniel. He says, do you understand why I came to you? But I shall now return to fight against the prince of Persia. Demonic forces in Persia. So I am going forth, and behold, the prince of Greece, the next kingdom up the bat, had also a demonic force that was over it. Do you know why? Because every kingdom on earth has a demonic force that is ruling over it to bring chaos and fear and destruction and temptation, because Satan only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. This whole place is under the authority of Satan. And listen, I have never once in my life done a long-term study on spiritual forces and the spiritual realm as such. I mean, I've certainly talked about it and maybe have preached messages on it, but not a series. But I'm feeling more and more that is necessary, and this is part of that. Ephesians chapter 4, Ephesians chapter 6, he keeps coming back to this idea that it's all about spiritual forces. There is a huge cosmic battle that has been taking place behind the scenes with us on the primary stage, and we don't even know that it's going on. Because I'm so simple-minded and I'm always looking for these really ridiculous things, or maybe my mind just goes to these ridiculous things. It kind of reminds me of probably, I don't know when it came out, maybe 2012, something like that. I don't know why I'm thinking 2012. The first Transformers movie. I never played with Transformers as a kid. I mean, I was always outside riding my bike and playing in the ditch and stuff like that. But I never did. But when Transformers movie came out, I don't know what made me go see it, but I did. It was, man, I loved it. It was awesome. And it was so funny because these Transformers had come to Earth, and they were disguised as, trucks and cars and all that kind of stuff. And then you had the bad guys, and they were semi rigs and all that kind of planes and all these kind of things. And there was this whole war that was going on, and some people were caught up in this war, and they didn't even know it. They didn't even know it. And that's exactly what is taking place right now. There is a spiritual realm that is just as legit as what we're knocking on right now, as what we're reading, as they're talking about, and the cars that we're going to ride home. It's just as legit, maybe even more so. And it's where the real thing is happening. And that stuff is going on behind the scenes. And Satan has had control over this world. And so when it says that he has 7 heads, it is because he has and will continue to rule the world forces that are in place right now, and what have been and what are to come. I had this, listen, and I had the strongest pause to really drive that point home. Daniel! Anyway, so, all right. Well, if I didn't do it with my words or my silence, hopefully, God will drive that home to you. So, are we like fairly clear as to what we're talking about now in Revelation chapter 12? We're talking about, we've been introduced to Israel, we've been introduced to Satan and the fact that he is over the world forces. But just wait until we get to the 10 horns next week. That's some fun stuff, man. Fun stuff. So I'll go ahead and tell you. I'll go ahead and give you the preview. The 10 horns are referring to the kingdom that Antichrist will rule during the tribulation. That's what it's talking about. And if you want a little precursor, well, I don't want to confuse you. Daniel talks about it twice. Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. It's just cool. It's just, man, you need to be here next week, or, at least watch it online. It's just cool stuff. So, anyway. All right. And we're, like, when we say we're strangers in a strange land, I'm glad we got a home to go to and all that kind of stuff, but, man, this place don't belong to us. And we do not belong here. We don't. But, anyway. That's what this whole fight is over. You go back and read Revelation chapter 4. Whole fight is over the title deed of the earth, Satan usurped it. Jesus is coming to take it back. And the rest of the book is saying this is how he's going to get it back. There's your overview of the whole book of Revelation right there. I've never said it quite like that before. Because I talk too much, which is why y'all going to be late for choir. All right, what choir requests, what prayer requests do you have tonight? If you're watching online, you can put prayer requests in the comment section, and I will mention those out loud. Any prayer requests that you have in the room? Anything? Nothing, honey? Okay, well, I don't see any coming in online either. Maybe we won't be late for choir, or y'all won't be late for choir. That means everybody go sing. Everybody go sing. Okay, well, let's pray and then we'll go. God, we thank you for the amazing unity of Scripture and how the Bible teaches the Bible to us. And I don't know. I don't know why I don't know why I get so stoked over it. I don't know why any of us are ever surprised over anything like this. It's just you. That's just kind of how you are. You don't contradict and you don't make mistakes and you speak clearly. And I guess just sometimes we're just not in a position to understand it or hear it. And then when you just do your thing, we kind of get surprised over it. So we just thank you that you continue to show us these things and continue to open our minds, give us the capacity to understand and to comprehend what it is that you're teaching to us and the truths that come out from that, and then help us to be able to pass that on to others and to abide by it ourselves. Thank you for our time together where we can study these things and get together, whether some people, the best they can do is online, and I pray that you'd bless them for their efforts. But for those who are here, we just thank you for the chance that we have to sharpen one another as iron sharpens iron. And we look forward to doing that together on Sunday. But until then, prepare us for the work that you have for us, for the things that are going to come our way, the good and the bad and all that. Prepare our hearts and help us to respond the way that you would respond, the way that points people toward you. Thank you for meeting our needs, and though we didn't have any requests that we mentioned out loud, certainly there are things that we struggle with, and so just meet us at our point of need. Thank you for letting us call on you, and thank you for giving us our time together tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, so much for that pause as well. All right. Thanks for joining in with us. Yeah. All right. We'll